Councillor Milligan, Councillor Kunzelman, Councillor Ireland, Councillor Madsen, Deputy Mayor. So I'll just move for an adjournment till we, I think Marnie, the Deputy Mayor will be here in a moment. So I'll move for an adjournment. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. We'll now adjourn for 5 minutes. Thank you. Live. Let me know. Thumbs up. Thank you. It's 9:05. The adjournment is completed. Thank you very much. I'll just take the attendance again and I can see that everyone is in attendance. Thank you very much. We'll start off with an acknowledgement of country. Councillor Kunzelman.
Ipswich City Council acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet on behalf of the citizens of Ipswich. We pay respect to elders past and present and the future leaders of the Yagara, Jagera and Yugurapul people.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'd also like to say happy birthday to you today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Many happy returns from all of us here, and I'm sure the people of Ipswich as well. Happy birthday.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And opening prayer. I think Councillor Tully, will you be giving the opening prayer this morning?
Heavenly Father, we seek you to be with us in this meeting today. Help us to be an example to others, bring strength and encouragement in whatever we do, and equip us for any task and challenge that may arise. Give us guidance to make wise decisions for the benefit of the community, however hard and unpopular some may be. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councillor Tully. Oh, we have no apologies or leave of absence. We'll move on to condolences.
I move that Council convey its condolences on behalf of the citizens of Ipswich to the family of the late Michael Whiting. Michael was the Regional Director of State Development's South East Queensland West Office. In that office and in other regional centres, he has worked hard to develop economic opportunities and present the face of the state government to regional Queensland. Michael died suddenly and is survived by his wife and 2 children. Apart from his family, his colleagues and friends, of which I count myself one, we will miss his particular brand of humour and his self-deprecating style, just as his contribution to the service of the public will be remembered. He is remembered as decent and kind and worthy of our praise in this public expression of regret at his passing.
Thank you, Councillor Cornselman. And in addition to what you were saying, Michael Whiting was a fellow Rotarian in my Ipswich club, and my Ipswich Rotary Club. And he was actually our president-elect. He was meant to be the president of our Rotary next year. He's without a doubt a guy who was a jokester and a prankster. But behind the scenes, as the regional director in the Queensland Government for State Development, he did so much to help businesses here locally in Ipswich, but also attract larger businesses to come here and invest in Ipswich as well. I'm sure he was very missed by the community of Ipswich. Thank you. I don't have any tributes. I don't have any petitions, and no presentations and deputations. We come now to public participation, and the Ipswich City Council has a public participation policy, and this will be the first time it's being used. I call forward Dr. Jackie Rand to the lectern, and Jackie's going to speak to item 19 of the General Purposes Committee, which is the Community CAT program, which is there. Just to remind, obviously, this is the first time we're doing this. Normally it's 2 minutes, but Jackie, as a council, we've decided that we would like to give you 5 minutes to discuss things. And we invite you, and I'll have my little timer going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mayor Teresa Harding and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to provide more information today. 30 years ago, I stood in the old RSPCA shelter. The room was full of cages with cats and kittens. All had to be killed. And kittens don't just lie quietly in your hands when you inject the barbiturate into their heart. They squirm and they mew. Can you imagine how that would feel if you'd taken a job in a shelter because you loved animals? An RSPCA vet said to me, "I've seen so many lives damaged by having to kill an endless stream of kittens and cats." Today across Australia, an average of 50% of cats entering shelters do not leave alive. Most are healthy, many are kittens. And yes, RSPCA Queensland is doing much better now than the average for Australia. But every year, nearly 600 cats are killed in their shelter from Ipswich suburbs. Most are healthy and treatable. 41% of the cats that come from Ipswich are kittens. And I've spent 15 years doing research to understand the cause of the problem and what to do about it. I've published over 20 papers in international journals. So where are the cats coming from? Most are strays, fed by people who don't perceive they own them. They talk to them daily, and they say the cat helps them through the tough times. But most are not desexed, and they are the major source of cats and kittens being impounded. Banning feeding doesn't work. They just keep feeding. And these cat carers are very traumatised when their cats are trapped and killed. Ipswich has at least 10,000 cats being fed every day by people who don't perceive they own them. The other major source of cats and kittens are cats that people own but simply cannot afford to have them desexed. Last year, you impounded 1,800 cats, but that leaves 4,000 females producing 5 kittens a year. That's 20,000 kittens a year. Most die before they get to 6 months of age, but enough survive to ensure that you have the same number or more next year in Ipswich. Your management strategy doesn't protect wildlife, it damages people's lives, and it costs you money. An AMO at the Banyule Council in Victoria told me she cried in a car as she held a young kitten she knew would be killed in the shelter because it was too expensive to bottle feed. She decided to stop this killing, and she started a program that has most of the elements that I propose for Ipswich. Banyule decreased their impoundments from 7 cats per 1,000 residents to 1.2 cats. You currently impound 9 cats per 1,000 residents. What would it mean for the City of Ipswich if you could achieve same or better results? Impoundments could decrease from 1,800 cats a year to 300 cats a year, and cat-related complaints would markedly decrease. Less ratepayers' money would be spent in the future on cat-related issues. The proposed new pound would be smaller and cheaper to build. We're proposing a research trial in Rosewood and Goodna. But you say, how will the community ever accept it? Well, that's the concern of every council that has before starting a program like this. But in the words of one animal management CEO who implemented it, we're extremely worried about our community backlash because of the changes in the services we were going to provide. But just do it. The ceiling won't fall on your roof. The ceiling won't fall on your head. It is the solution for stray cat complaints. It works. End of quote. Desexing programs are the only feasible method of reducing numbers of stray cats in cities and the problems they create. Desexing programs will protect our precious biodiversity. They'll markedly reduce cat-related complaints and will reduce disease spread. Today, I'm asking you for your support from the Ipswich City Council to be part of this project. Let's stop pretending a Band-Aid works and work together on a solution that will solve these problems.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rand. Appreciate that. And that item will be discussed at item 19 of the GPC when we get to there. We'll then move to the declarations of interest and of matters on the agenda. Are there any? Councillor Fechner?
In accordance with Section 175C2 of the Local Government Act 2009, I declare that I have a material personal interest in item number 14.2, Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee's report, because of the nature of my business interest in Bar Heisenberg Proprietary Limited, located at 164 Brisbane Street.
Thank you very much. And you'll address that by?
And I'll address that by leaving the room.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Fechner. Councillor Madsen?
In accordance with Section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, I declare that I have a conflict of interest in item 14.2, Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee's report, as I'm a member of the executive of the Ipswich Trades Hall and Labor Day Committee, which is immediately adjacent to the Ipswich Central Redevelopment. And I intend to deal with this conflict by leaving the room while the matter is discussed and voted on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Madsen. Appreciate that. Are there any other conflicts of interest? And just a reminder to councillors that if during the discussion you think that a conflict does raise, just straight away a point of order and highlight it to the rest of us. Thank you. We'll now go on to the confirmation of minutes. Can I have someone to move the minutes, please? Yeah, Councillor Ireland, and a seconder, Councillor Kunzelman, thank you very much. Any discussion on the minutes? No, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go on to the confirmation of the minutes of the special meeting. May I please have a mover, please?
I'll move that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. And a seconder, Councillor Kunzmann. Thank you very much. I now open up for discussion. There being no discussion, I now put the motion for the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. I now move on to the mayoral minute. Now, pardon me, I wish to stand for this. To finalise the last of my commitments made to the people of Ipswich as part of my 100-day Fresh Start plan, I have two mayoral motions I am tabling today. First, I wish to deal with the issue that keeps most of us up at night, the complex and uncertain future we face on fighting the war on waste. Today, before this council, I propose that we take unambiguous steps towards a new way of engaging with and working with our community, interest groups, key stakeholders and subject matter experts in the waste industry. The Ipswich City Council local government area receives approximately 58% of all waste disposed of in Queensland. We also receive 73% of all waste disposed of in South East Queensland. So we do need a step change. Today I'm proposing the establishment of a waste and mining working group and a separate industry representative group to support that. These groups will be established through an expression of interest process and formal terms of reference and governance arrangements will be developed for each of them. As a matter of priority, I propose that we leverage the collective knowledge of the members of these groups to develop the Clean Slate White Paper. The purpose of this white paper is to make explicit the current challenges we face and the opportunities to remedy these, and in consultation with members to determine a preferred future state for waste and mining in Ipswich. With that, I move the following three recommendations. I move that Council establish a waste and mining working group to be chaired by the Mayor, with a standing invitation open to all councillors to participate as members. Secondly, establish a waste and mining industry representative group to be chaired by myself, with a standing invitation open to all councillors to participate as members. And three, delegate to the CEO the development and implementation of the terms of reference for the working and industry representative groups. As a mayoral motion, that is now moved and seconded. I'll now open up for any discussion on that before I move to the second one.
Through the Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Madsen.
I'd just like to take the moment to show my support for this motion. There's a lot of concerns in the community about the waste industry and how it's operating, and I think Councillor Ireland can mirror the sentiment that a lot of people in Division 1 are very concerned about expansion of the waste industry and are currently faced with odours from one corridor in Ipswich. And I think if we can elevate the level of discourse around this issue and look at what options we have moving forward as a city, that's only a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. Any other discussion? Councillor Fechner?
Yes. You know, we speak about this quite often, you know, as a cohort. It's something that deeply affects us and does keep us awake at night, as you suggested, and I'm not all that surprised to see the Mayoral Minute focused on waste, because in light of recent events it seems quite timely that we start making moves on this. We're only early, you know, in our 4 years, but if we start making moves now, I think that this is the right decision for us as a council to say that, you know, as the decision-making body for the city, we're not going to put up with cowboys getting their own way, you know, all of the time, and that we need to stand up for our people. Councillor Doyle and I in Division 3 had to endure some very tough phone calls and emails last week when there was a dump on fire, and it just creates a certain level of uncertainty. And I think in the creation of these working groups, we are able to get answers to constituents quicker. And I think that that's an important problem that we have with the waste issue. Nobody knows the toxic, fumes that they're inhaling when, something's on fire. Nobody knows who to talk to or who to call. Like, there were some people who were choosing to call their divisional councillor instead of the fire department for answers. There were people choosing to call the mayor's office instead of calling the waste company to understand what they were actually breathing in. Who were taking those air samples for people. It's something that it really does deeply affect us, and we need answers for our constituents, and it is so important that we establish these working groups, but we find meaning within them so that the lines of communication are better, so that we all share the same expectations, and we find a way with which to work to make better health outcomes and environmental outcomes for our city. It's absolutely not good enough, and I think now is the perfect time for us to stand up for the people who elected us, and it does. And this, I cannot understate that this is an extremely important issue for every single councillor that sits before you, Mayor, and I commend you on this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. And you referred to the dump fire that happened Sunday week ago. And I just want to give acknowledgement to when residents did call me and I went out to see the fire, I immediately called the member for Bundamba, Lance McCallum, and he straight away called environmental regulators and organised for them to be there the next morning and so on. So we do need to work together and making sure that each level of government do what they're supposed to do, I think, as part of this. Councillor Kunzelman?
I thank Councillor Fechner and Councillor Madsen for their comments. I would just like to simply say that this is the issue on which we need to demonstrate the leadership, and this is one of the big issues for which we've been elected.
Here.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Deputy Mayor.
Through the Mayor, I just want to make some further comments around the working group. From my perspective, I see the working group as a vehicle where I will be strongly advocating for appropriate professionals and experts to guide us through this. The time for talking is over, and from my perspective, I won't be happy just to have a talk fest as part of the working group. The time is now for change. We need to review our current planning scheme, identify changes and opportunities to affect change, real change, as well as look at our new planning scheme to work out what we need to put in place to make sure this doesn't continue to happen. And I see this as the appropriate vehicle to affect that technical change that's absolutely overdue.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Milligan?
Yes, Mayor. With respect to current jurisdictional arrangements, clearly Council has a few of the options amongst the levels of government, and I believe that this initiative that you're proposing is exactly what Council needs to do, and I thank you very much for bringing it to Council to move forward, and this is the action that we can take on behalf of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Are there any other speakers? There's no other speakers. I'll take it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. I now move on to my second mayoral motion. My second mayoral motion is relatively straightforward and deals with further transparency in procurement. I'm proposing that we publish basic contract details for all awarded contracts and procurements over $10,000, excluding GST, on our newly established Transparency and Integrity Hub. We have received excellent feedback for our efforts around transparency to date, and as I said before, this is just the beginning of the journey. The change proposed today will bring our practices in line with the Queensland Government and the Federal Government policy, and will go one step further to ensuring this council is accountable to the people of Ipswich. The current legislation states that we only need to disclose contracts over $200,000. We'll be changing this to be $10,000 in line with state and federal government. It's really important that this council is accountable to the people of Ipswich. This change is especially important to ensuring we can be as open and transparent as possible about how we procure goods and services, and allows us to better monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of our new by Ipswich procurement policy. I move that Council accept the recommendation to amend our procurement policy as tabled in this report. As this mayoral motion is now moved and seconded, I'll move on to discussion around the floor. No discussion?
Through the Mayor,
Yes, Councillor Fickner.
do you envisage that this will have any administrative challenges, or do you just see this as being an amendment that's easy to roll out across the organisation?
My experience working in state and federal government is that obviously there'll be more reporting because there'll be more contracts being reported.
Yep.
I don't see this. We could always ask the general manager if of the workload impact, but I'd say that the trade-off is that we're being more open and more transparent.
Yeah, I support that.
Yeah. But good question. Thank you, Councillor Fickner. Councillor Conlon.
Sorry, we did consult with the general manager and the manager procurement in developing this policy, and they were satisfied.
Okay. So if I may just address Councillor Fickner. My understanding that the General Manager of Corporate Services has been very involved with this, and it's not a major impost on the organisation. Thank you. Councillor Kunzelman.
Once again, we have a demonstration of demonstrating the leadership for which we were elected, and I particularly endorse the By Ipswich program.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman.
Through the Mayor.
Councillor Madsen.
I'll just add that I'm not saying much on this because it's pretty self-explanatory. I commend you on the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. I think there might be some in the community that don't like the approach that this new council's taking and being more transparent, more accountable, but we won't stop to make sure that that the people of Ipswich and the ratepayers of Ipswich know how their money is being spent and how decisions are being made. With that, I'll go to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go to business outstanding matters lying on the table to be dealt with. The ordinary meeting, the Swifts matter will come up later, CEO.
No, the Swifts matter is part of the minutes of the General Purpose Committee.
Thank you. So there's nil on that. Then we have the reception and consideration of committee reports. We now have, I think, a recommendation here that the General Purposes Committee report be received and adopted. I'll go to Councillor Fickner, who was the chair of the General Purposes Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to move a recommendation to batch a few of these items that have previously been discussed. I have spent the last week as the chair of the General Purposes Committee dated the 21st of July, liaising with yourself and fellow councillors to see which were the items that we wanted to pull out and discuss and which we were happy to take the recommendations on. So on that and the groundwork that I've put in, I move that we accept the recommendations of the General Purposes Committee report, excluding items number 2, 4, 5, 8, 10, 16, 19 and 24.
Thank you very much. And I note the fact, Councillor Fickner, of you following the meeting protocol and working with all the councillors on doing that. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Second.
Councillor Kunzelman. I'll open up for any discussion. No? That case, all those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. In that case, we'll now go straight to item number 2 of the General Purposes Committee, which is actually item number 4.1 in this agenda here, which is the Ipswich Central to Springfield Central, or the I2S Public Transport Corridor Strategic Assessment and Infrastructure Australia Stage 1 submission. May I have someone to move that, please? Councillor Ireland. And a seconder, I think Councillor Milligan. Thank you very much. I'll now open it up for discussion. Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Mayor. It's very important for Division 1, in particular, that we get the extension from Springfield Central through to Ripley, which will then extend through to Ipswich, because we have a priority development area. We expect to have over 135,000 there within 10 years. And as we know, if transport isn't there at the beginning, people will buy the second and third cars and we'll never get them onto the public transport. So from my point of view, I think it's important that we get some form of good transport there to get people to rail stations so they're not in the car. And I know that transport's not necessarily our responsibility, but since we're advocating, then I think this is a really important project for Ipswich.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ireland. Councillor Madsen.
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to reiterate that I support the concerns raised by Councillor Ireland. And another thing for me that I think is really important with this piece of infrastructure is that it'll drive connectivity between our communities. It'll physically connect Ripley to Springfield and Ipswich CBD, which brings us all together as a city. Historically, the infrastructure connecting Ipswich and Springfield hasn't been great. So maybe that's the reason for the divide at times in the discourse about who gets what. And I really support that this council's taking a strong advocacy position on this, and we're using all the might that we can muster to lobby to make sure that this happens. It's really important that this piece of infrastructure doesn't end up on the Never Never. Well, yeah, that it doesn't end up on the Never Never. It has to happen. It's that important. Like, yeah.
Thank you, I know you're very passionate about rail as well.
Rail family.
Rail family. Thank you. Councillor Milligan.
Mayor, I'd like to support the comments of both Councillor Ireland and Councillor Madsen with respect to connecting our greater city area. I have received opinions and commentary from members of the community that have suggested that this is not the realm of local government. However, I rebut that with the fact that it is when all levels of government work cooperatively that things happen, and Council taking the lead in this project and working towards getting all players to the table to fund this, and after designing it, that the benefits to our greater community will occur.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Councillor Fickner.
Through the Mayor, I hope we do get the support from our state and federal leaders on this, just because of the sheer scale of this project. I echo the sentiments of Councillor Madsen, where he suggests that he doesn't want this to end up on the Never Never, and I think by the very nature of the hard work that has already been put into this advocacy piece, we're making moves so that that doesn't happen. There's quite a formal process that needs to happen to advocate for big pieces of infrastructure like this. It's almost a once-in-a-century project to connect our communities in the way that we're trying to do. So I think that previously, the community has heard people come out and say that, we're building this or it's happening, and, you'll get a Queensland Times article about it, and then you won't hear about it for the next 10 to 15 years. I mean, look what's happened with the Norman Street Bridge. It's all talk, and none of the difficult groundwork has been done by any level of government in the city to make sure that we have a strategic plan to actually get the outcome that we want for our community. So I think that just acknowledging the piece of work that's being done here, the recommendations that we will be accepting today, if we decide to do so as a whole council, means that we are making moves to get this project off the ground. We're at the forefront of this, and we just need, our state and federal leaders to fall in line and get behind us on this.
Thank you, Councillor Fickner.
Councillor
Ireland, yes.
I think that we should say that we're not just looking at heavy rail, that we are looking at 4 options, which were heavy rail, light rail, trackless trams and rapid bus transport. So we're not fixated on the heavy rail. I just want them to have some sort of transport to move people around.
Understood. Thank you, Councillor Ireland. Councillor Madsen.
I would just add that I agree that we can't be fixated on the heavy rail, but it did score the highest on the assessment, so it's still the best option. But we're open to other ideas.
It's expensive.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. Just for clarification with the people of Ipswich, I just want to commend the the former interim administrator, Greg Chimello, and the interim management committee we had, and I see Steve Greenwood is here in the audience here. They had the forethought to commission this business case. Now, normally it's a state government issue, but the council spent, I think, around $750,000 in getting this case done. We are following the Queensland government Building Queensland business case framework, and there are 3 business cases if we're after substantial infrastructure. This was stage 1. The next stage is obviously the next part is stage the second business case, which will cost $2.5 million. I have spoken with all the state MP, all the 5 state MPs here in Ipswich about that, and obviously there's a state election coming up, and as new candidates are announced, this council will be advocating to everyone, for all candidates and all parties, to support this business case. And I'm just going to read some of the facts that we are raised at the GPC that you chaired, Councillor Fechner. Ipswich is the oldest provincial city, but it also has the fastest population growth. Our projected population growth is 4.6%. You compare that to Queensland, which is 1.6%, and Australia is 1%. The business case shows quite clearly that 70% of that growth, I'm going to reiterate that, 70% of that growth is actually along that public transport corridor. Now, obviously, if we are looking at heavy rail or other options, that does take time. We do need public transport there in the meantime, and we need it now. I know that earlier this year the state government brought in those 18-seater buses around Spring Mountain, and that's been incredibly popular, and I thank the member for Jordan for organising that. But we do need a solution now, and also a solution, and while we move to the solution for a more longer-term public transport solution for the growing area there. Thank you.
Just through the Mayor, I think it's worth noting that by the year 2036, this could be costing our community in excess of $30 billion a year. $3 billion? $3 billion a year?
I thought it was $1 billion.
No, 3? 1? Well, I mean, to be
money.
$1 billion.
to be considered a project that is causing significant damage to the community. It only needs to be causing $23 million of damage a year to the local economy. So, did we get confirmation from Bronwyn there?
Yeah, so $1 billion. $1 billion.
$1 billion from the year 2036. So, I mean, in terms of the way that projects roll out, this could take 10 years to land, so if we don't start doing something about it now, it's going to be a huge cost to us, and no one will be able to get to work in the morning.
So it's our biggest infrastructure issue that needs to be done to connect our city.
Correct.
And just to give some other figures, with planning, I think Springfield has around 40 to 45,000 residents, and that will grow to at least 100,000. Ripley currently has about 12,000 residents. That's going to grow to 135,000, as Councillor Ireland said. So as we move this forward to Infrastructure Australia and trying to secure state and federal government, I can't think of another project that Infrastructure Australia will have on their books that is more needs-based. Families do need this, and the areas of Ripley and Springfield are beautiful areas, and that's why so many families are flocking there, and that's why the state government have also had the special provisions in there for young families, for all families actually, to build beautiful homes in Ipswich there. If there's no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous, thank you very much. Still on item 4.1 for the General Purposes Committee, but item 4 of that General Purposes Committee, which is the adoption of the Ipswich Nature Centre Master Plan. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Fechner. And may I have a seconder, please? So, Councillor Milligan. Thank you very much. I now open up for discussion on the Ipswich Nature Centre Master Plan.
Through the Mayor, I would like to acknowledge how regionally significant this is for South East Queensland. We have our own little zoo that many of us have enjoyed for many years, and it's nice to see, a high-level strategic piece about the development and continuation of investing local money into this really important community asset. I think that it is the #1 TripAdvisor destination for Ipswich, so it by its very nature, unlocks a lot of economic benefits for us, those travelling from Brisbane and the wider Queensland and even interstate. When people come to this city, it's the first place that they tend to visit. It's quite synonymous with us. We all got to enjoy it growing up, and it's nice to see that there is a piece being done to make sure that we preserve and that we invest money there. It's going to be a great, it's going to continue to bring lots of economic development to the city. So I just want to say that I support this.
Thank you, Councillor Fichtner.
Mayor, I'd like to, if I may, commend council officers working to develop the master plan. There were a lot of considerations that needed to be taken into account, restrictions of space and future plan as to the inclusions for the future, and it's not something that was a quick and easy achievement for them. It was something that they had to put quite a deal of effort into to develop, and I think we need to support, as Councillor Fichtner stated, for the right reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. I think it's important to have that master plan, and for people, we need to communicate that to the residents of Ipswich to see what their thoughts are and views are. I think it's quite a good piece of work. It also comes with a price tag as well, so we've got to look at, if we decide to proceed with this, how that will be funded and the stages that we'll be doing that. But I think it's really important for us to get that feedback from the residents. Any other discussion? Those in favour, please raise your hand. I think it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 5 of the GPC, which is the White Rock Spring Mountain Conservation Estate Master Plan. May I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Island, and a seconder, Councillor Madsen. Thank you very much. I'll open up for discussion now. Councillor Island, I know you're very passionate about this.
It's a beautiful conservation area, and I do congratulate the staff that have worked on the plan. It has been the trails of people have gone out and made their own trails through it, and trail bike riders have done the same. So we have had erosion on some of the tracks, but the plan it looks absolutely fantastic. White Rock itself is a sacred women's area, and I would like, if it's possible, I'll put my bid in. I think that we should have a park ranger there that on weekends and school holidays that can explain to people why the rock is a sacred rock and try and get them to stop climbing all over it. But it's an excellent project, and I'm looking forward to seeing it start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Island. Councillor Johnnick.
Through the Chair, the implementation of the White Rock Spring Mountain Conservation Master Plan is proposed to be undertaken over 4 stages. I believe it is a well-considered master plan, and it's much needed for the protection of our cultural values and our local fauna and flora. It will also enhance our community's health and well-being through outdoor, sustainable, nature-based recreational activities. So I believe this conservation master plan is a big step in the right direction for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnnick. Councillor Tully.
Yes, I think it's one of the most important items on the agenda today over a 20-year plan, and it's an extremely large area from through to Spring Mountain in the east, bordering on the suburbs of Spring Mountain and Springfield Lakes. There's just one issue I'd would raise in relation to this, and that's getting the right balance between conservation and community safety. One of the issues that's come up in that Springfield Lakes area in particular, and it will be an issue in the Spring Mountain suburb as well, where this estate abuts up to very close to residential areas, is getting that right balance with bushfire management. We need to ensure as a community that that is properly considered and properly given effect to. And there are so many issues that I've raised this previously over the years, that we need to ensure that we work with other authorities whose prime responsibility is in relation to the bushfire management. But it concerns me that you see other communities around Australia where, for reasons best known to local authorities in those areas, that hasn't happened. So I hope as part of this plan that we can ensure that we we get that right balance, to ensure that the area from the west to the east, where it abuts residential areas, and it's not just Spring Mountain and Springfield Lakes, it's Redbank Plains in particular, and the emerging suburb of White Rock as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. Councillor Madsen.
I would just like to add that I'm really happy to see that there's some plans in there to better deal with the cultural significance of the site. The cultural significance of a number of areas on that in the conservation estate to traditional owners and broader all Australians is something that needs to be treated better. Currently, a lot of people climb up onto the rock and over the rock when they probably shouldn't do that. And it will encourage people to use the trails more appropriately, and that's something that I also support. People love going for a bushwalk. It's a great way to unwind. It's a great family day out. And it's really exciting to see that new options will be added for that, but it'll also take into account the important cultural matters on that estate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Madsen.
Through the Mayor, I don't think the Council should disregard Councillor Ireland's comments about potentially putting a ranger out there. I think that as an employment opportunity for a local Indigenous ranger, it would be a wonderful, wonderful idea. And I think you kind of snuck that in there, but I'd like to highlight that we could use an idea like that to to work towards better outcomes in achieving the objectives of the Indigenous Accord. So I think that there's a really nice tie-in there in preserving the cultural significance there, while also creating jobs for people, and particularly local Indigenous people. Like, wonderful, wonderful idea. So I just want to commend you on that little gem that you've thrown out there for us, Councillor Ireland.
Through the Mayor, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. So for my 2 cents worth, I note what Councillor Johnick said, this is a 4-step process, and under there is a management plan that will come out of this, as well as an implementation plan. I think it would be really important for us to make sure that we do look at those options of Indigenous ranger, and I know there's federal government programs for that as well. And I know, Councillor Ireland, you've mentioned before having toilets with water or water tank, as well as the very important issues that Councillor Tully has raised with bushfire management and how we get that blend of conservation and community involvement. So I think we look forward to working with council officers on those management plans and the implementation plans, CEO. I think we'll be looking forward to that. If there's no other discussion, we'll go straight to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 8, which is the proposed new sublease over freehold land for community purposes to YCare, South East Queensland, Incorporated, trading as YMCA. May I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Tully, and a seconder, Councillor Johnick. Thank you. I'll now open it up for discussion. Councillor Tully.
Yes, through the Mayor, I'll just be very brief with this, but it's very pleasing to see the recommendation from the committee to council today to award the sublease to YMCA. They have proven themselves good managers in relation to the other facility at the Springfield Lakes State School. I think this will be an important contribution through a sound relationship between us and the YMCA. And as I said, I think they've proven themselves as good managers, and this will be of immense benefit to the Greater Springfield area.
Thank you. Any other discussion? There being no discussion, I'll put to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 10 from the GPC, which is the community donations report. This report is just for the report to be received and contents noted. I guess, are there any? May I have a mover, please?
I'll move
Councillor Fechner. Seconder. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Johnick. I'll now open up for any discussion.
Just through the Mayor, I was the councillor that picked this particular item to talk about, and I know that it's just a report for noting, but there's heaps of wonderful, good news stories in here about council working with community groups so that they can achieve some of the goals, big and small, that they had throughout the year. You can pick on a few wonderful events that Fusion Arts Incorporated, they received a sum of money for their performing arts at nursing homes. And I think that, when I looked into this particular group, they're a young performing arts organisation that the council is now supporting, but not only are we supporting them to pursue their performance endeavours, we're also helping them perform and enrich the lives of others. So, I just wanted to highlight the fact that if you take the time and you care to look at all of the community donations that council has made across the year, there are so many wonderful things happening in our community that we can celebrate. It's not all necessarily doom and gloom or bad news stories or Facebook trolls. I think that there are some absolutely wonderful things happening out in our community. So I just wanted to highlight that and just hold my head really high and proud of the great work that community groups do for us here in Ipswich.
Thank you, Councillor. Our volunteers do an incredible job, and the ratepayers of Ipswich, I think, it's their money that we're donating on their behalf. I think we want to make sure that we do make sure that it does go to worthy organisations who actually give value and benefit the people of Ipswich. Thank you. Any other discussion? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 16, which is the community donations request. May I have a mover, please? Councillor Doyle, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Fechner. Thank you very much. I note that there are the two items here that Council approve a community donation of $6,064 to the City of Ipswich Pipe Band Incorporated towards the completion of building works and the pipe band premises. Does anyone have any discussion?
Through the Mayor, I think it was remiss of us not to mention the actual donations at the General Purposes Committee last Tuesday, so I did decide to bring it up again just so that we can highlight these groups and the work that they do in our community as well. $6,000 for the City of Ipswich Pipe Band means a lot to them, particularly coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, where there's a certain level of uncertainty for our community groups. It was timely of them to have the nous to apply for this money from council, and it's a wonderful spending of ratepayers' money there.
Thank you. Councillor Kunzelman.
I'd certainly endorse this, particularly as it's partly to do with disability access.
Okay.
So I support it for that reason as well.
That's a very good point, Councillor Kunzelman. And I think too, many of the ceremonies, events that we go to in Ipswich, we're certainly the beneficiaries of the music and the ceremony and the pomp and circumstance. I think the pipe band of Ipswich City provide. And the second one is the council approve a community donation for $2,250 to the Rotary Club of Bouval towards the cost of provisions for the Footprints in the Park project. I think they do that work up at Queen's Park. Any discussion on that?
Through the Mayor, I believe that the Rotary Club of Bouval have been applying for this money to support the Footprints in the Park program for a long time now, and as someone who used to do that as a young man in high school in partnership with Footprints in the Park, I think that this is a very meaningful way and a great spending of public money again to not only help disadvantaged people, but it also it's a good social outing for people to go and hang out in the park as well. And I certainly always enjoyed my time with them.
Thank you, Councillor Fickner. Any other discussion? Also, I commend the Rotary Club of Bouval for providing this valuable service to people who are a bit down on their luck and providing warm meals and companionship and fellowship to those in need. If there's no further discussion, I'll put to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. I'll now call for a 10-minute adjournment. May I please put that to the vote? Those in favour? Thank you. We'll have a 10-minute adjournment. It's now 9:53, so we'll come back at 10:03. Thank you very much. Reconvene now at 10:05. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 19 of the General Purposes Committee, which is the Community CAT Program proposal. There are 3 recommendations in that. And those recommendations are the Council declined the request from the Australian Pet Welfare Foundation to participate in a trial CAT reduction program as part of the 2020-21 operational plan. The second recommendation that Council offers to prepare a report on a possible CAT reduction pilot program with no financial support or an in-kind contribution from the Ipswich City Council. And the third one is that Council requests the officers to reconsider the proposal as part of the Council's budget discussion for 2021 to 2022. May I ask for someone to move those recommendations? Councillor Doyle, thank you. And Councillor Milligan is seconding that. Thank you. I now open it up for discussion. We've had the presentation from Dr. Rand, thank you very much, who is still here and available. I now open it up for discussion.
Mayor, if I may also thank Dr. Rand for her attendance today and providing the time to give a further explanation to Council to assist in the consideration. And the recommendations that we have before us are straightforward, self-explanatory. The committee has recommended that to ordinary meeting for adoption, and yes, I would request my fellow councillors to support all 3 recommendations.
Right. Councillor Kunzelman?
Through you, Mayor, I agree entirely. I think that we should go with research and respect it for what it is, and that, once again, Ipswich City Council can provide leadership.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. May I ask the relevant General Manager, Mr Peter Tabler, to come, who is the General Manager for Planning and Regulatory Services, to come to the lectern? To hit your head.
That's close.
Just your name and title.
Sure. Peter Tabulo, General Manager of Planning and Regulatory Services.
So as part of your job, Mr Tabulo, you look after the regulation of animal control, animal management, as well as feral animals? Is
Just one of the many functions, Mayor.
Thank you. I know you've reviewed this. What's your professional opinion of the program and the recommendations?
Mayor, if I may, I've got some thoughts jotted down here. Won't take long, a couple of minutes just to present to the councillors some views. So councillors, as you'd be aware and appreciate, animal management is, as I said, a major function of my department and local government generally. It can be complex, confronting and highly emotive when it comes to dealing with the pets and animals of our community. From a management perspective, the challenges that we face are many, and often those challenges are a result of the strong bond between owner and animal, and officers being caught between that relationship. Council has many management practices when dealing with these issues, and in the report that was presented to the committee, there was some of those aspects were outlined with respect to the CAT issue. There is, however, no single strategy for success. It's a combination of actions that we must take. In my view, responsible ownership of animals is at the cornerstone of success when we're dealing with dog or cat management. From a dog perspective, we have registration, and that's proven to be the basis for ensuring that there is a link between the animal and the owner, and therefore ensuring or inferring some degree of responsibility when it comes to that relationship. As you are probably aware, when it comes to cat registration, that's been a vexed problem across local governments historically, and has proven to be, in my view, totally unsuccessful wherever it's been trialled. The registration of cats is just one of those problems that just doesn't work for a whole variety of reasons, and that can be a topic of another report or conversation at some stage. The program proposed in the reports that we're considering today are dealing with urban cats, not feral cats and not rural cats as such. And the distinction is made in the information that it's cats that are what's been called semi-owned. And it seems to me that the success attributed to the trials to date are a result of the program shifting the ownership of the animal from being semi-owned to someone taking greater or fuller responsibility for that animal. The success of the program and the willingness of the owners to be involved in the program may result simply as a fact of the cat having gone having gone through a neutering process, desexing process, or microchipping or the like, and that has picked up the cost of those tasks by someone else for the person who has semi-owned the animal to date, and therefore that person is now willing to take over greater ownership. There is no doubt merit in the program that's being proposed. However, it's my view that the officer's recommendation and the recommendation that was slightly altered by the committee is the right decision to be made at this time. There are, for example, a range of questions and aspects to the program that still need to be explored and clarified and presented back to determine what the full impact of the program would be. For example, what is the legal or contractual constraint on the handing over of the animal from us once we've held it for 3 days and it's not claimed by its rightful owner to a third party? We don't know that status yet. We still need to explore that. Who will be paying for the desexing program and the microchipping program and the like? How significant will the officer's role be in further education, transporting the traps, picking up the traps? Those types of things still need to be explored. And so, as I said, I firmly believe that if we have time to review those aspects, explore them a bit more, provide the details from the proponent, and then come back to you at a future point in time, we will be in a better position to be able to make a decision about whether this program should be supported going forward.
Thank you, Mr Tabulo. Are there any questions of Mr Tabulo? Yeah, Councillor Madsen.
Through the Mayor, I would just like some clarification. Mr Tabulo, do you believe that recommendation B serves as an opportunity for Council to work with Professor Rand to come up with a cat reduction program that works for Ipswich Council, or?
Yes, it would. It would. The Council, by proposal B, is putting some constraints around what you're expecting to see with regard to no financial or in-kind contribution from us. So it's clearly setting the roles as to how we would participate in it. And that pilot program could be either something that we auspice or something in partnership with another entity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunzelman.
Can I make comment?
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say to the General Manager that we acknowledge his and his officer's years of experience, and we never meant to not acknowledge those.
Never taken.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman.
So,
Mayor,
Councillor Milligan.
also I'd like to acknowledge Mr Tabulo's level, even approach on it, and his insightful, his professional view is very, very welcomed, and provides further clarity for members of the council to make effective decisioning on behalf of the community. And also thank council officers in your department for their time and their work to further investigate. And just in general, that also thank the members of the General Purposes Committee for the healthy debate on the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Yes, I think we debated for about 40 minutes in the General Purposes Committee.
Sure, the community likes to see that.
That's okay. Councillor Ireland.
So I don't know whether this is the time.
Could you
but
speak up, please? Sorry.
We let this lay on the table then until we get the report back from the General Manager to look at the legal side of things?
No, that is the report.
But we're asking him to come back with a report. That's what we're saying.
Sorry, excuse me, please, Councillor Mazza, please come through the chair when we're doing things. So, Councillor Ireland, you've put forward that you wish to lay the matter on the table. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Do I have a?
Sorry.
So, do we have a seconder for that or not?
You don't.
You don't need to. No. We don't need a seconder in that case. I'll just move to the vote. Does anyone want to lay this on the table?
Can I just make a comment? Sorry, Mayor.
Yes.
I just need clarification. By laying on the table, this decision has no force and effect, so the officers don't have direction as to what we're doing
Exactly.
with the program. So I just want councillors to be understanding of that aspect.
Thank you, Councillor. So I call for a vote to lay it on the table.
Oh, so it's me.
Please note that Councillor Ireland voted for it. Those against laying it on the table, please raise your hand. And I note that Councillor Fechner, Tully, Johnnick, Doyle, Milligan, Kunzelman, Madsen and myself voted against it. Thank you. So we'll come back to the item again. Thank you. Are there any other discussion points that people would like to raise? Oh, thank you, Mr.
Through the
Taylor.
Mayor, this isn't a question for Mr. Tabulo. Just know that a report like this obviously takes time, and by the very nature of preparing the report, the program is technically costing the organisation money. So I just want to. I look forward to reading the report that details better the actual cost to the community and the ratepayers, because that's very cloudy at the moment, and it's difficult to make a decision on. Even though it says with no financial support, it might end up that it could be a bit of a burden on some of our council officers, depending on the way that it's integrated. I'm probably of the opinion that it's probably impossible to roll out this program without council's financial support, but look forward to reading the report and seeing what that Mr. Tabulo and his team has to say about possibly working together and in conjunction and getting a better outcome there. It's just all too very uncertain for anyone at this point in time.
Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Councillor Madsen.
Through the Mayor, I'd just like to raise some of the points that Professor Rand brought up to us. Reduction in impoundments was achieved in a similar program elsewhere, and a reduction in compliance actions. That would be savings to the council, i.e. savings to the ratepayer. So it's very possible that it would be a very rational and pragmatic decision to eventually roll out a program such as this, because it seems that it could very much make economic sense.
Through the Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
In terms of that net saving for on impoundments, I don't know. I think that's a very complex statement to make, Councillor Madsen, in that the net saving might go to the RSPCA and that contract, the saving to that contract. So I think that probably needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. If there are savings on impoundments, is it actually the ratepayer that's achieving the saving there as well?
Through the Mayor.
Councillor Madsen.
I'd just like to retort that I accept what you're saying. I haven't got anything quantitative in front of me saying what's going to happen. I'm suggesting that, it's a possibility, and we should consider possibilities at times.
Thank you, Councillor Madsen. I guess I'll speak as someone who's... my daughter's a complete cat lover, and we have 2 cats, Dottie and Ginger, at home. And we're responsible cat owners. We do have a cat enclosure, so they're not let out. I think anything that would reduce harm on our community, and if it could potentially also reduce the costs on ratepayers, and if it's not at a cost or a minimal cost, be some man hours, is certainly something that we could be looking to consider for the council to look at. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Milligan?
I'd like to support your statement there, Mayor, in that viewing it in holistically, that it is the right and responsible thing for council to further investigate on behalf of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Especially if there's at no cost. For that, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. So I'll look around. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. I think there's a big smile on Dr. Red's face there. She can breathe out now. We'll move on to the final matter on the General Purpose Committee agenda for discussion, and that's item 24, motions for the 2020 Local Government Association of Queensland Conference. May I have a mover for this recommendation, Councillor Tully, and a seconder, Councillor Mayor? Thank you. I'll now open up the floor for discussion. Councillor Tully.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. There's two items that this council's putting up to the local government conference later this year, and we had a fair discussion of both of those at last week's committee meeting, and I'll just comment on both of them, which both have my strong support. One is in relation to DAs or development applications. At the moment, the legislation gives an applicant the power to stop the clock, is the wording, in relation to a variety of matters where the time doesn't tick down for council or for them to take the next step in the process. But there is no corresponding or identical provision to stop the clock for councils. Now, many councils, particularly growing councils such as ours, have many development applications coming through the system in every year. This motion that we're putting up to the local government annual conference is to seek a similar provision for councils, the 77 councils across Queensland, so that we could stop the clock, as it were, to enable us to properly assess each application without the clock ticking down, particularly in cases where there could be a deemed approval, which is a very difficult situation that a council could find itself in, or a deemed refusal, which is probably not as great but as great a problem, but is certainly significant. The other one is in relation to the additional motion is in relation to the recent amendments to the Local Government Act in Queensland, which would provide if a mayor ceased to be mayor in the first, for whatever reason, in the first year of office, that the runner-up at the election would be automatically installed as the mayor of the local government. Our proposal is that both for mayors and councillors, that a vacancy that occurs within the first 3 years would be filled by a by-election. In relation to mayors across Queensland, there's numerous examples, and this was considered, as I said last week, at the local government policy executive recently, many examples where the runner-up has scored a particularly small vote. And it defies logic, in my view, that someone who got 6%, 8%, 10% of the vote, even 20%, could automatically become the mayor. As I said last week, the issue mightn't arise, because it's currently legislation, it mightn't arise for many years, but sooner or later down the track, a popular mayor in a city who gets 70 or 80% of the vote, and a few other contenders, could, if they retired or well, I won't explain any other circumstances, but they ceased to be mayor in that first year since the election, someone with a minuscule amount of the vote would be automatically elected. There'd be no decision by council, it would be automatic under the legislation. And I think there is a concern generally across local government. I suspect that there'll be many councils putting up a similar motion to the local government conference, and certainly I think we should support both of those motions going forward. And I'd like to thank the officers through the CEO for preparing the background to particularly the second motion that I've just mentioned. That background was put together during the course of the period between last week's committee meeting and today.
Thank you, Councillor Tully. For myself, when I've attended the last Community Council of Mayors South East Queensland, this matter also raised, and certainly my view that it was unanimous that this disenfranchised the voters, and it was not a good thing to take that decision away from the voters. specifically, as Councillor Tully, if it was a mayor that was particularly popular and did have that 70 to 80%, and therefore someone could get in as mayor with single digit, was Councillor Tully at 20-something% vote and still get in. And probably the best mechanism was for us to go through the LJQ policy executive like yourself, Councillor Tully, and move this at the conference. Any other discussion? Right, we'll vote on recommendation A first, which is the planning matter. May I please have a raise of hands of who agrees to that motion? Thank you. I see it's unanimous. And I'll just confirm for recommendation B, we still have Councillor Tully as moving it and the Deputy Mayor as seconding. The mayoral.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
We'll put that one to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Thank you. Now that is the completion of the items for the General Purposes Committee, and thank you very much for chairing that, Councillor Ficker. We now move on to the other standing committee that we have, which is the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee, which is chaired by the Deputy Mayor. We call an adjournment.
Conflict.
Oh, conflict, sorry.
You're going to declare the conflict?
Wait for you to leave. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, as the chair, would you like to make any statements on moving this report?
Before we have the relevant General Manager come down and speak to us about the executive report, I guess there's a couple of exciting things that I'd like to raise in relation to the redevelopment that have occurred this week. One being the pilot facade improvement program. So that has gone live. That's the program that where council is committed to matching dollar for dollar up to a maximum amount of $15,000 for owners of buildings throughout the agreed CBD area as part of the pilot, where those monies will be used to improve the facade to, complement, I guess, the redevelopment that council's undertaking as well. So I look forward, I understand there's quite a bit of interest from building property owners within the CBD, so look forward to that pilot getting underway.
I concur, Deputy Mayor. Certainly, I know the interim administrator started this program, and I understand there's around 60 businesses or something like that, CEO, that are very interested in this particular project.
Second piece of news that I received this week is quite exciting, I guess, from a historical and heritage perspective in Ipswich. As I'm sure most people are aware, at the top of Nicholas Street is a building owned by a number of families, long-standing families in Ipswich. It's known as Nolan's Corner. But what possibly a lot of people aren't aware of, the building was formerly owned by an Ipswich family known as the Greenham family. And there is a book that's, about to be published on the Greenham family. And it gives a great insight to very, very early days within Ipswich. We're talking around the era of 1850s. They were a very significant family in Ipswich, and to invest back in those days and build a building of this size and stature is quite important. So, and one of the family members was the first student at Ipswich Girls Grammar School. She was also the first female to become a doctor in Queensland. So a little bit of a big piece of Ipswich's history about to hit publication, and I want to take the opportunity to work on this particular piece to see how we can tie it back into the redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Were you proposing to batch any of the items
Yes.
from the committee? I
propose that we
I think there were 6 items on that agenda last week.
Yes, so if we batch 4 of the items, being item 2, 3, 4 and 6.
So we will discuss items 1 and 5?
Yes.
May I have a seconder to that? Councillor Kunzelman, thank you very much. Those in favour, please raise your hand. I see that's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll go on to item 1, which is the Ipswich Central Executive Report. I have a mover for that. Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor. May I have a seconder for that? Councillor Johnnick, thank you very much. I now open up for discussion.
Through the Mayor, subsequent to our committee meeting last week, at that meeting, I know Mr James Hepburn was appointed as chair of the subcommittees. So subsequent to our committee meeting last week, Councillor Johnnick, deputy chair of this committee, and myself have had a meeting with Mr Hepburn and outlined a number of pieces of information, additional information that we would like to see going forward. One of the important pieces is obviously the financials, including details of the profit and loss, variances along the way, as well as the contingency fund. I understand from our discussions with Mr Hepburn that Council will be engaging the services of a quantity surveyor very shortly, and I'm very keen to see that assessment to understand the cost to complete, what's been spent so far, what we've got for our money, and the cost to complete. And we've also asked for a report on the status of retail leasing. So there's quite a few pieces of information that Mr Hepburn, in conjunction with the General Manager Sean Madigan, will be putting together for us, which will inform us for future meetings and decision making.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you want me to invite Mr Madigan up, or
Yeah.
Mr Madigan? So your name and title, please.
Sean Madigan, General Manager of Coordination and Performance. And you're wanting me to speak to item 1, the executive report?
Okay.
Certainly. So in the executive report there, for the holistic project that you have there, you'll see that we are projected to be meeting the budget that has been set by Council in relation to the administration building and the civic precinct. The timeframes of those, so we were scheduled to have what is called a topping out ceremony last week, which is the completion of the core and the external aspects of the administration building to the final level, being the 9th level. That was postponed and will be held later this week with a media opportunity there. From an exciting point of view, with the administration building, it was projected to be completed end of July, early August. At the PCG held with Hutchinson Builders a week and a half ago, they indicated now they're looking at around about June to actually complete that. So they are about 6 weeks ahead of schedule, and from everything they have said to us, that will continue probably to shorten in terms of time frame as they get into the interior and fit out of the building. That poses some, I guess, challenges for Council in terms of the immediacy of the move to the new building. So you're looking at approximately 11 months, shifting all of Council's operations from these assets that we are in at present down to there. But yet again, it's a new chapter for the Council as an organisation, and the injection of some 700 to 800 government workers and employees into the economic base for the Ipswich Central redevelopment. In the Civic Plaza, that is progressing extremely well, so that we have planted trees and landscaping in there. We're expecting that development to be completed by around about October of this year. Then we will need to bring a report back to Council in the coming months around when we're going to have a grand opening for that Civic Plaza and the new library. I'm aware that obviously the Rosewood Library opened on the weekend, and hopefully the councillors that have observed that and the community members have seen the quality of work that was developed there. So the same, I suppose, library design company that did that mode design have been involved in the design of the new library building that will be present in the Ipswich Central redevelopment. So you can expect a similar finish and appearance to that. From a risk management perspective, we're still dealing with COVID is the predominant risk that we have to deal with at present. And then that's more so around uncertainty in the retail aspects of the redevelopment that Council approved the strategy for last month at the committee meetings.
Through the Mayor, thank you for that report, Mr Madigan. Another piece of information, I guess, I think this committee finds really important, we'd like to get our head around is, I guess, the heritage overlay and the importance of maintaining Ipswich's heritage as part of the redevelopment. I was really excited recently to receive some photographs of the old Nicholas Street bridge railings, beautifully stored out at our Colo depot. I've since had a discussion with Mr Daniel Keenan from our Heritage Department. He has a few ideas on how we could potentially incorporate those old railings within the development. And in light of the heritage significance, I guess, of the Greenham building at the top, I don't think we've ever really explored, potential historical value of that building, and maybe an education piece or plaques or naming of laneways after the Greenham family. So how do we get that heritage?
Certainly. Mr Daniel Keenan works in our Planning and Regulatory Services Department and is our resident heritage expert, if you will, when it comes to architecture and the history of the city. So what we have done is as you said, the old railings that were there are actually being incorporated into it'll be the western fence that divides the ramps from the main civic area, so they're being incorporated into there as an architectural piece. The architects, Buchan Architects, have been working closely with Daniel Keenan in terms of that to make sure that we incorporate those into there and acknowledge them. The last drawing that I saw, it really is incorporated into it, so you can definitely see what they are and where they have come from. From a heritage perspective as well, there is a fairly famous picture of two ladies walking, I think, arm in arm with handbags and in their finery through effectively Nicholas Street and over the bridge that used to extend through there. Mr Keenan has recommended that we actually create some silhouettes of that to incorporate those into our Nicholas Street redevelopment. That is still in the concept phase, but I have given the approval for that to occur, and it's just a question of the placement of those. So what we are trying to do, tying that in with the Commonwealth Hotel, is to, whilst we acknowledge that this is a new and vibrant city, it's also acknowledging the past of the city and how important it is, to do that. So what we have done is, as part of this, no different to the Indigenous consultation that was conducted, I did establish a council working group that had all of the representatives, including Mr Keenan, and he is effectively the heritage voice in the project and has provided, as I said, the use of the balustrade and the railing and the silhouettes and other ideas to be incorporated into the actual precinct. I have asked Mr Keenan to present to the next round of the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee talking about the heritage, so he'll be doing a report on what he has incorporated so far and how it means, how it ties back, and any other ideas that he might have that he would like Council to consider.
Thank you, Mr Madigan, for acknowledging the importance of the heritage overlay. It's something that many of our residents are very passionate about, including myself. There's a lot of history here, and where possible, would like to see it preserved. So thank you. Look forward to Mr Keenan's presentation.
Yeah, he's very passionate.
Yes. Mayor, through the Mayor, I have nothing further.
There were no other questions on finances or risk. I know at the CBD Redevelopment Standing Committee, we had quite a few questions about finances and risk. You're happy with what you're going to be getting back from?
Yes,
the
so I've put that in writing to Mr Madigan and Mr Hepburn, so there is quite a swag of information that I've requested, and Mr Hepburn and myself have already had a discussion. It's obviously subject to discussions with Mr Madigan, the best way to present that information to us, and potentially looking at a 2 to 3 hour workshop might be the best type of forum to educate all of us.
Okay.
But I will work with Mr Madigan on that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's a big piece of work.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mr Madigan? No. Thank you very much, Mr Madigan. Thank you. I'll just go to the CEO. Are there any issues or concerns or risks around the CBD redevelopment that haven't been highlighted here or at the meeting last week?
For a project of this size, the actual construction risk is comparatively low. Obviously, our risk is a lack of discipline on scope. So, as a group, be that the elected group or officers, you can blow your budget quite quickly when you play with scope towards the end. Is one risk, but that's a risk that you actually have to positively engage in to achieve. Normally, in a big project like this, you would have had far more major variations by now. So we're actually, in terms of time and on budget, the actual construction is looking very good. Obviously, the most significant issue is the retail component, how attractive the terms of any potential tenant being, given the uncertain both health and economic environment we're going into what is already a challenging retail environment. So by far the most significant risk component of this whole project is the retail/commercial component of this asset, and that will pan out over a period of time.
Thank you, CEO. Any other discussion? Okay, so I'll move for item 1. It's a recommendation. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now go on to item 5, which is the Ipswich Central Visioning and Placemaking. With the recommendations are that the Central Visioning and Placemaking report to be received and contents noted, as well as a report summarising the resourcing, governance and budget required to implement the recommendations of the Ipswich Central Visioning and Placemaking report with alignment to the previously received Nicholas Street Place Activation Plan be presented to a future meeting of the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee. May I have a mover for that, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. And a seconder, thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. I now open this up for discussion.
Through the Mayor. Thank you. I acknowledge that the Nicholas Street redevelopment and communications plan, engagement plan is obviously a very important piece of work. I guess we have to acknowledge and have confidence in the plan as it evolves going forward. So I think this plan obviously talks about the remainder of the stage of the construction phase, but we will move right through to a place one day where I'm confident will be an active, busy, thriving, Nicholas Street precinct. Where hopefully we will move to a point where we will be attracting investors to take the development off our hands. So as we move through the various stages and we have our different caps on, whether it be developer to precinct or centre manager, we need to ensure that we have the right people formulating the right communications and engagement plan, because the space is heavily reliant on activation. So I think developing a team, and I've had discussions with Mr Hepburn about this, how he sees management of the precinct going forward, and a very dedicated team to, not unlike a shopping centre management team whose primary focus is on Nicholas Street, managing security, tenants, and activating the space every day. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know the hard work they're doing in securing those anchor tenants. In discussions with you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Are there any other points, discussions, comments? Okay, so I'll put those 2 recommendations to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Yep, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. I'll now adjourn. I'll move to adjourn for 10 minutes while we call in Councillors Madsen and Fector to join us. I'd like to move that we have a 10-minute adjournment. May I have a vote on that, please? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. It is 10:44. We'll come back at 10:54. Thank you very much. I'll bring us out of the adjournment. It's 10:55. Let me know when we're good to go.
Yep, we're live.
Good to go. Thank you very much. We've come back from our adjournment. We're now on to item 5 of the ordinary council meeting, which is the officers' reports. On this, and we're going to 5.1, which is the 2020 committee and council meetings. To date, we have been operating in council, I'll just go to the relevant page, having a full council meeting and having, I guess, 2 standing committees, one the general purposes committee, another the CBD redevelopment. Now this is our 4th council meeting. We've been here for, and we'd like to break that up into different standing committees as is normal practice within council. May I have a mover for recommendation A, please? Councillor Kunzmann, thank you very much for recommendation. And a seconder, Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. Would anyone like to discuss it or go into the breakup?
We have to, the way the recommendation is put, unless you're going to move A and B separately.
We are.
Okay,
And C
well
each
then
one.
we should just move A and B, and then we'll move C separately, because C, we actually have
Okay.
to nominate the members, or you
Yep.
form a motion
Which-
with the membership.
Which we will do.
Okay,
So
so it's
I'll-
A and B.
Okay, but I'll ask for someone to be a mover for recommendation A and B. Councillor Kunzelmann?
Yeah.
Councillor Fechner, you reckon? So we're looking at, thank you very much for recommending A and B. I'll open up for any discussion for those 6 committees. No, in that case we'll vote. Please raise your hand if you're in favour. I can see it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to recommendation C, which is looking at, I guess, 6 different committees, standing committees. The first one, working with the council office, we've had a workshop on this, and we spent a great deal of time talking about this and all of them, and who's leading and chairing and being members. And I think we're proposing what I'm proposing today, and I guess hopefully we'll get through today, is what has been workshopped previously. So I'll start with the Governance and Transparency Committee. So I'm proposing that the Governance and Transparency Committee is chaired by Councillor Madsen and deputy chaired by Councillor Milligan. And members of that committee will be myself, as well as Councillor Johnick, Councillor Doyle and Councillor Kunzelmann. May I please have a seconder to that? Councillor Doyle, thank you very much. I'll open that up for discussion. No discussion. Thank you very much. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you.
Sorry, that was moved by yourself.
Yes. For the next committee, we're looking at Community, Culture, Arts and Sports Committee. Oh, sorry, I won't.
Yeah, we might just have to do it
Sorry.
just a little bit slower if we're going to handle
My
them
apologies, Vicky.
bit by bit, yeah.
Unanimous?
Yes, unanimous. Yep. Thank you. We're into the Community, Culture, Arts and Sport Committee. I'm proposing that Councillor Fechner chairs that. That is deputy chaired by Councillor Kunzelmann. And the other committee members are myself and Councillor Johnick. I have someone second that, please. Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. I now open that for discussion. Also, as I know that Councillor Fechner and Councillor Kunzelmann are very passionate about this particular portfolio, and I know that this particular will be well looked after. I'll put that matter to the vote. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the Economic and Industry Development Committee. And I propose that Councillor Johnick chair this, and the Deputy Chair is Councillor Madsen, and members with myself, Councillor Fechner and Councillor Kunzelmann. May I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Kunzelmann, thank you very much. I now open that up for debate, discussion. No. Put it to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous. We now move to the Environment and Sustainability Committee. I'll move that Councillor Milligan is the chair of that committee and Councillor Fechner is the deputy chair, with myself and Councillor Madsen being the members on that committee. May I have someone second that, please?
Second.
Councillor Fechner, thank you. Thank you very much. May I open this up for discussion?
Mayor, did you mention Councillor Johnick?
On the Environment and Sustainability Committee? I didn't mention it. I didn't think I had, but
As a member, sorry.
I didn't have you down.
Is that right?
No.
Okay, sorry. My mistake.
So the motion stays as it is with those 4 members. Any other discussion? Put to the vote. Those in favour? Raise your hand. Thank you. The Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee. So do we need to redo this one as it's already been?
No, it doesn't need to
It's
be
not
moved
changing?
at all.
Yep.
It was just there for completeness.
Okay.
But you could, if you wanted to, just so that they're all there. You'd reaffirm. Oh, there wasn't a deputy.
It wasn't a
chair.
deputy. Okay, well, we'll do this one. So I move that the Ipswich Central Redevelopment Committee continues to be chaired by the Deputy Mayor, and the Deputy Chair will be Councillor Jonick, and the members will be myself, Councillor Cornsman and Councillor Milligan. May I have a seconder for that, please? So, Councillor Ireland, thank you. I open up for discussion. No, in that case, I'll go straight to a vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you, it's unanimous. We'll go to the last one, the Growth and Infrastructure and Waste Committee. After the workshop, I move that that I chair that particular committee, that Councillor Tully is the Deputy Chair, and that all the councillors are members of that. So Councillor Ireland, Councillor Madsen, Councillor Jonick, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Fector, Councillor Cornsman, Councillor Milligan are members of that committee. May I have someone second that, please? Councillor Doyle. Thank you. I open up for discussion. Nope. We'll vote.
Sorry.
Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you very much.
And we need to move D to...
Yep. Go to D so that the response...
D to F. We move them separately or together. D, E and F need to be moved, which is the responsibilities, the timing and the terms of reference.
And we do need to look at, we'll be coming up to how often these meetings are meeting. There's options 1, 2 to 3. Will that be done now as well? I can't see that here.
Yes, so it depends which option you want to pick in terms of F.
So we probably need to look, yeah, especially with E. Well, I'd say E. We have on the paper that we've been discussing, CEO, the options 1, 2, 3 for the meeting dates.
Yeah.
Which would that would need to be discussed before we move to.
Well, at the moment there's a set of recommendations in there. If you want to adjust E from E, actually has a set of meeting dates down.
Okay.
As a recommendation, if you wanted to move something different, then you'd move something different. I think the debate is about January.
So just before I open this out, I'll just, one of the things that we've had some emails going around to look at the different options, and I think if you've all had options 1, 2 and 3 with the meeting dates, I think they're pretty much all similar except for December, January dates. I think in discussion and emails that option 1 that was emailed out was probably the most one that people preferred, which does align with option E. Or the recommendation E, I should say, not option E. Recommendation E as opposed to recommendation. E. I'm jumping to E. May I have someone move recommendation E? Councillor Feckner. And second, Councillor Kunzelman. Any discussion on those? Or if you want to go back into what those options 1, 2 and 3 were that were...
Have we put D? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go to D next. Yep. Thank you. Discussion? In that case, I'll move to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. I'll now jump back to D, which is the responsibilities for each of the standing committees, be as details in the terms and reference as attachment 1. I have a mover, please. Thank you, Councillor Feckner. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Milligan. Open up for discussion on the TORs. No, in that case, I'll put to the vote. Those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you.
And then just F.
Here we go to F. That the terms of reference detailed in attachment 1 be adopted for the standing committees as outlined in recommendation A, subject to amending the membership of the committees, etc. May I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Madsen. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Fechner. Discussion on that point? No? Thank you very much. We'll move to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. I think before moving on, I think that the people of Ipswich know that we've had quite a few workshops and discussions in trying to get the right committee structure that will make sure that we service, looking at the management and the risk in managing Ipswich City Council. We've stuck pretty much very similarly to what was set up under the interim administrator, as well as the addition of the CBD redevelopment. Now we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, 5.2, which is must-do Brisbane engagement. May I have someone who will move that? Thank you, Councillor Ireland, and a seconder, Councillor Fechner. Thank you. Before we go up to discussion, may I ask for the relevant council officer to come to, I shouldn't say the stand, to the lectern?
Richard White, Manager of Procurement.
Thank you very much. Do you mind outlining what this must-do Brisbane contract would be?
Yeah, so it's part of the council strategy for our advertising, and we do have, if we want to go more into that, a council officer for that as well. Essentially, this is fairly late. We should have had this come through GPC. It is a direct engagement with Must Do. They provide a social media platform. They have a viewer base that we're seeking to target here. The reason we're not doing this as a quote or tender, and we're asking for this exemption, is it would be disingenuous to go to the market. We know the market. There are only a set amount of people that do this work. It's not a sole supply because there are other suppliers that can do this kind of work. It is more that this company does the most. So we're not going to go to quote on something we already know the volume and answer for. So we're not going to waste the market's time or our time doing that quote or tender.
So, Mr. White, is this company an Ipswich-based company?
No, this is a Brisbane-based company.
Okay. Do they employ anyone from Ipswich? Do you know?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. And I'd like to thank you for putting the cost up front.
Yes.
In the
Looking to structure the
recommendation.
offers, the recommendations differently so that you see them. Yes.
Deputy Mayor.
Through the Mayor. Mr. White, when you say we know the market, can you give us a little bit more around that, a bit more of an explanation on...
Yeah. I could have the responsible officer for... Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. White. Please state your name and your position, please.
I'm Alistair Tavares. I'm the Destination Development Manager. Cover tourism for the City of Ipswich. Specifically to your question, Councillor, we've done a test pilot with this particular publication. They currently, based on the information we have, cover about 58% of market share. It's a niche publication covering travel and tourism. So if you're in Brisbane, as an example, Must Do Brisbane is one of those publications that you end up identifying for what you want to do over the weekend around the SEQ. So currently we have data such as, how many unique visitations come to that particular website versus a couple of others. And so when we look at the numbers, they showed up as about having 58% market share. So it's a provider we've also worked with previously, and they've done really well for us. This particular opportunity covers 52 weeks of showcasing Ipswich to our drive market audience.
Okay, thank you. So you are confident then that there are no other competitors or emerging competitors in this space?
Not at this point. In a year from now, it could be different, and so.
Thank you.
Mr. Tavares, what's the council actually purchasing? Is it a magazine? Is it a web presence? What is the council actually purchasing?
We're purchasing 52 stories of the City of Ipswich being promoted through their channels. Right?
Would you mind explaining some of their channels?
So they've got a website. They've got approximately 400,000 unique visitors in 2019. Can you guys hear me?
It's not a microphone projection. It's for live streaming.
Sorry.
So
okay.
Just feel free to speak up though, so everyone.
So in 2019, they had approximately about just under 400,000 unique visitors to their website. They've got approximately about 200,000 Facebook social media fans. And that's the audience that we're targeting. Young families, day trippers. Right? that ends.
Councillor Kunzelman?
Do we have some control over the content of those?
Yes, we do. So
We provide those?
correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Mr Tavares, what kind of reporting do we have afterwards to see how successful it is? How do we benchmark or see if it was successful or not?
So we get quarterly reporting, which actually shows us how much traffic or page views per story, and that helps us gauge what's relevant to that particular audience, and then having the ability to change it up every single month. Right.
And how do we engage with the business community and tourism network here in Ipswich to make sure that as many businesses as possible can benefit from this?
So we have roughly about 116 businesses that make up ITON, which is the Ipswich Tourism Operators Network. Literally on a weekly basis, we get fed information from businesses on what's new or what's changing in their business. That helps give us the information we need to then determine what needs to be promoted in the city. Yeah.
And do we work, just say we, obviously there's 52 stories, and just so we feature, well, our first one, two businesses, the tourism operators. Do we work with them to find if there's feedback, if it worked or not?
Yes, correct. So what we look for is active feedback in terms of whether they've actually seen any demand, inquiries, leads. If it's not effective, we just don't do it.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr Tavares? No, thank you very much for coming. I'll now open up for discussion amongst the councillors. No discussion. I'll put that to the vote that we approve this procurement. Follow the recommendations. I see that it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to 5.3, the monthly finance performance report. May I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Jonik. And a seconder, Deputy Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Doyle. May I call on the CFO? State your name and your position, and provide us with a summary of the
Thank you, Mayor Harding. Councillors, my name is Jeff Keach, the Chief Financial Officer. The report showed before it is our standard monthly financial report, this time for the period for the full year to June 2020. Consistent with previous months, you've got a detailed analysis that's both in the report but also the attachment that's there. And there's a number of matters through that analysis which, if Council likes, I'm happy to run through and highlight some key points for you. And we can have some discussion for any questions that you have from there. Overall, the result you've got there, draft, starts to look like a surplus of $2 million, but there's a number of adjustments that I've highlighted in the report that's happened after the accounting period closed. So we're looking towards about basically a break-even position in terms of a surplus of originally forecast of $3 million. And there's a number of factors outlined regarding our revenue and expenses as to why we're down below that level. One of them, for example, was a change in the QUU tax. We anticipated a position that was we thought would be the case, and we've been notified post-closing the accounting period that that's not the case. It's a significant enough adjustment that I need to account for that post the end of the year, as the finance people, as councillors, will understand fully. The overall, the net result, the net worth of councillors has gone up by about $165 million. Now, that's a number that includes significant donated assets and capital revenues. So whilst it's a very large number, there was over $100 million worth of assets donated to us through developments over the year, as well as things like capital grants and capital subsidies in that space. And as we've spoken over the last few months, there's been an impact on some of our revenues through both COVID and other items as well that's impacted there, and I'm happy to highlight a few of those items for you. In relation to the revenue side, there's a note specifically in the report around fees and charges. We've spoken about this again over the last couple of months. That was down below budget by about $1 million in June, and there's one specific item reason for that, and about $2.9 million year to date. So part of that has been as a result of town planning fees, but council made a decision in June that we would accept animal registration, dog registrations, to be paid in the 1st of August. That meant that $600,000 will be received on the 1st of August and wasn't normally received in June. So that's one of the major reasons why we're below in that $1 million in the June period. There's also was a rates categorisation matter that was decided, and council obviously then had some coal royalties which we weren't had visibility of that was notified to us. The net difference between those two is actually a negative impact of about $900,000 in the month. So between those two items, you can see why there's been a little bit of a drop off in revenue in the June period, and we did receive some extra dividends from QUU, which is also highlighted in the report. An area that we've spoken about again is a key area is our cash contributions from developers for our capital infrastructure. You'll notice year to date that that's down about $6 million overall, which is quite significant. Some of that, there was a trend with result to the development industry coming forward, but obviously that dropped a little bit heavier after the COVID impacts as well. Again, we've spoken through the budget workshops. That's an area that we will need to keep close monitoring on through the 2021 year, as well as things like our fees and charges revenue that we've spoken about previously. From an expense side, there's a couple of areas from there. We've spoken in the past around employee costs had the trend of being over budget. That's continued through June and is over about 2.4 million, which is about 2% when you think about it as the whole year. The executive team have looked at that and will be continuing to closely look at that through 2021 and monitoring that further. One of the areas which is very difficult to analyse as a direct impact, things like annual leave, for example. Through COVID, a lot of staff didn't take annual leave that would have been there. That has an impact in the fact that they still have a leave balance, but it increases our costs in the current year. So again, that's something we'll need to monitor in terms of both from a health and safety and well-being of our staff to make sure that they take appropriate leave, but also in terms of the managing the outstanding balances and costs associated with that. Depreciation was above budget for the year of about $2 million. We followed before, we did receive some donated assets. Originally, we budget for about $60 million a year in donated assets. We received about 120, 130. We did do that in a budget amendment, but again, that had an impact on depreciation. Hard to estimate fully, but it would probably be $600,000 or $700,000 would be a rough estimate of mine in that space. And I guess for one area of materials and services, June, whilst it's under budget for the whole year, as people know, when you come to June, you end up with what I refer to in technical accounting terms a hard close, where we end up with full accruals and full costings, and we ended up slightly over forecast in the month than what we were originally predicting. Still under budget overall, but probably a little bit more spend in materials and services than what I probably would have forecast about 6 weeks out in that space. So overall, you know, probably looking towards a break even. We're still working through what we refer to as statutory adjustments for audit account purposes, and there's highlighted in the report some key items we're still working through, which we'll do so with the executive team and then in preparation for audit. Things like decommissioning some assets, some accounting standard changes, and just assessing the impact of the council's recent decision to award the final completion costs on the Commonwealth Hotel. We just need to understand that you've spoken before about the costs exceeding the potential value in that space, and we just need to assess that from an accounting perspective. What it means is some costs to date we might have to, what they refer to as impair those, because the ultimate value of the asset might exceed our actual spend costs. So we've just got some tidy ups to do in that in preparation for audit. And from a capital program perspective, we're about $3 million underspent against a $90 million capital program overall, so really quite close in the end in terms of our capital budget spend.
Well done.
For the capital delivery, particularly in IED, where their budget is probably about $80 million out of that 90, so they only ended up at about $800,000 off target in that space. But that's quite detailed. Hopefully it's answered. I'm happy to take any other questions that you have in relation to the report, if you have any.
CFO, I'm on page 149 of 151.
Yep.
One of the bar charts. Thank you for the graphical interface.
That's all right.
I'm just looking at the adopted budget figures versus I'm missing the budget adjusted figures. So I'll look at transport and traffic, where obviously originally the adopted budget was a smidge under 30 million, so around 29 million, I guess. Mm-hmm. And in the end, obviously that was readjusted back down to probably about 24 million. Correct, yeah. What was the reason for that adjustment? Do you know?
Off the top of it, back to February, there was about $18 or $2 million worth of capital programs deferred into the next financial year. So when they looked again at going through design in terms of delivery times, impacts in relation to again early works, reallocations of works, they felt they weren't going to be able to deliver that full program in the year. So the capital program was reduced down in the February budget amendment.
Right. And does that also include, I guess, the next one, park, sport and environment, where it did look at, it was an adopted budget of over 20 million was going to be spent.
Yes.
But in the end, you're probably looking at about 7.5, 8 million was spent.
Yes. Yeah, and that's again reassessing at that point in time where the delivery works with the IED team, and then reforecasting that in terms of what was likely to be spent.
Okay. Is the General Manager of IED in?
Not here at the moment, no. But we can get back to you the more specifics of that if you would like, Mayor, as to what was deferred.
Yes, yeah, I'm just, I am concerned. I just want to make sure that that is genuinely being rolled over and where there is, that those works are actually happening.
Yes, we'd have to have a look at whether some of those were in the next 3 years or in further works, yeah.
In particular, the parks, sports and environment does concern me because it's less than half the spend that was adopted.
We can confirm those numbers for you.
Yep. Councillor Kunzelman.
I just had a question about the coal royalties.
Yes.
And I'm sorry that I didn't get
That's okay.
to speak to you about that. Is that a recurring thing?
It's a
Are we going to get
unique
$3
one.
million every year?
No, probably not. It'll depend only on that one site. It's actually because most coal royalties are paid to the state. It's because we had ownership of the land pre-1910. So it was one that we weren't familiar with, but the owners of the property spoke to us over the last few months and have highlighted that where they normally self-assess those to the state, because of our ownership, that's required to be paid to us. So we're not anticipating that to be significant going forward.
Is that like a windfall?
A little bit there, yeah. Now, we'll have to work with them to see if there is any further. I'd have to check. I'm not sure where they are in their mining program, whether it's complete or still going forward. But I'm not aware that there's significant amounts coming forward, but I'll check that out, Councillor.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions of the CFO? No? Thank you very much. See, just because the General Manager of IED is not here today, so I'll defer to you. Those same transport and traffic, the park, sport and environment and the asset rehabilitation underspends, that obviously it was readjusted back in February. I know this next year's budget we've increased the capital works. Is that in correlation? Is the amount that was underspent or deferred from last year, has that entire amount being revolved over into this?
We have a program. Essentially, we have started to develop and publish for the first time a rolling program of works. I think it would be fair to say that many councils across Australia, and this one being one of them, have historically over-promised, included more things in their budgets, and culturally did that, and then deliver, a significant underspend. Certainly, I like to make sure that we deliver on to budget, and we perhaps have the harder conversations with the community and the council up front about what we're actually going to be able to spend, and then we're held against it. So we anticipate that we should be able to deliver our capital program going forward on a sustainable basis. And that's, as I said, historically, lots of councils, the council I worked at before when I first got there, we delivered 42% of our capital program because it was easy to allow projects to get in, to exceed to community and council expectations, but much harder to actually deliver them within the time frame, as you would be aware, in terms of design, approvals and services to get done. So we think sustainably we're able to deliver around $80 to $100 million in capital, excluding the major projects such as the CBD. Right. And obviously the CBD is essentially third-party project managed.
Okay. This previous budget would have been approved by the interim administrator, as well as the interim management committee as well. I'm quite concerned, CEO, that I should say quite a bit concerned that a body that weren't an elected body that are experts in the area didn't get that right. I guess am I being a bit too cruel? Or
look, I think
it's one thing to say that councils traditionally over promise, but this was a unique situation here in Ipswich.
I'm talking about essentially at the staff level. That was culturally what you would do. You would your expectation was to stack it forward. You plan for everything going right from a construction perspective, and that wasn't realistic. And so that was just historically in this organisation. I think if you went round this organisation's capital performance versus budget, original adopted budget and capital performance over the last 10 years, and I haven't checked it, but I would be very surprised if you weren't running, south of 60%. I could be wrong, but that's traditional. But many councils now move to working on very, very close tolerances, but on lower numbers in the first instance. So being more realistic with the community in terms of what they're going to deliver.
I guess that leads me to ask, Sarah, that this new council's probably spent 6 weeks of workshopping, working very closely with council officers. In your opinion, do you think they've overestimated to us what their capacity was to deliver on the capital works program, or do you think it's within those tolerances?
I think we're much, much closer. There will always be things that you find. You go in and you go to excavate a road, and all of a sudden there's telecom cables that instead of being 600 mil deep are 300 mil deep, and you can't go in and do that. One of the critical issues is our ability to pivot from that into another piece of work, so it's making sure your preparatory work is in place. In many ways, much of the risk is in services. I used to work in the electricity industry, and you could tell within tiny tolling tolerances what it would cost to put a power pole up. Because you're working above the ground. In civil, you don't know what's in the ground, whether there's contamination, whether there's services or the soil conditions, and so there is more risk in what we do. That means that jobs you do plan sometimes are, one, more expensive, or two, slower, or sometimes can't even be commenced. Our ability to pivot off job A and onto job B is a critical issue, and as we develop and we refine our forward financial capital program, the ability to pick a job from year 3 and pop it into year 1 to replace the job that's in year 1 that we can't do, and it goes into year 3 is where we want to be, so that we can sustainably deliver what we promise over the term of council to the community.
I do understand. I know an intersection near where I live, on the corner of Grange Road and Robertson Road. I think it was promised in a budget 2 years ago at the cost of $295,000, and I think it was promised last year by the interim administrator. It's in our budget now for $2.4 million because of stormwater drains and all sorts of things under the ground. We've now, as a council, released a 3-year capital works program. It's my sense the first time this council has done that. There's an interactive map as well as an actual plan, and I think the councils here will be working close with council to make sure that is delivered, especially the first 12 months. We understand years 2 and 3 things happen and so on, but I think this council will be following the council organisation very closely on the delivery of those capital works.
One of the critical issues is our fundamental process for capital works on a 3-year program is year 1 design, year 2 services, year 3 construction on all but the very, very biggest jobs, largest jobs, and before you do your detailed design, you put a concept estimate in. Depending on what you find, that concept estimate will change. And sadly, that concept estimate, normally, if it does change, will go up because, as I said, you might well find a stormwater issue, you might well find sewer that you didn't know was there, you might well find cables, you might well find adverse soil conditions. So there's those sorts of things when you work in the ground.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussions or questions of the CEO? No. In that case, I moved this recommendation that we note this financial performance report. Those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move to a late report, and it's a 15.4 disposal of council administration assets. Look at the recommendations there. Looking at the disposal of 82 Limestone Street in Ipswich and 3 Foot Lane. May I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. And a seconder, Councillor Madsen, thank you. May I ask the relevant General Manager to approach the lectern, please? I note... So your name and...
Sean Madigan, General Manager of Coordination and Performance.
I note that our reports are commercial in confidence, so if we ask you a question, we need to go into that. We'll go into closed session.
Certainly.
Could you explain? One, I want to know. I don't like surprises, Mr Madigan,
Yes.
can you explain to me why this is a late matter and so this has not been put out to the people of Ipswich for further discussion and
Yeah, certainly.
notice?
So this report relates to the disposal of the current council administration assets to West Moreton Health. This is to tie in, obviously, with our Ipswich Central redevelopment, with us moving into the new administration building. The reason that this is late is that we have been in protracted negotiations with West Moreton Health over the acquisition and the contract details for these assets. We require a final council sign-off for this matter to be able to progress. The urgency around it, as to why it was a late item, is presented, is the urgency sits with the state government, effectively. So West Moreton Health, whilst they have board approval to enter into this contract, they actually require approval of Cabinet. Of the Queensland State Government. So it has to go via Treasury and then up through to Cabinet. Obviously, with the pending state election, you have caretaker provisions commencing within a couple of months from now, and their urgency is to get this sorted, obviously, before caretaker, so that they can be ready to progress with the construction, demolition and construction of the new hospital assets where we stand right now. So that is the urgency around the report.
Right. Okay. So, Councillor Manning, if it was delayed a month for people to have more of an understanding, would that meet the Cabinet timetable or would it be within caretaker?
It would potentially fall within caretaker. I think it commences in September, I think it is the caretaker. But we need to provide West Moreton Health the certainty that council is accepting of the conditions of the contract in order for them to present that contract to Cabinet for sign-off.
And to have confirmation that if we do address this late report without a lot of without any community consultation, that it will definitely be slated for Cabinet for their approval before.
That is what we have been advised by West Moreton Health, that their minister is pushing for this. Obviously, they are under some pressure, as we know, in terms of the requirements for health services in the Ipswich West Moreton Health region, and they are really chomping at the bit to get into these assets and expand their footprint.
Now, 82 Limestone Street and 3 Foot Lane, that's down near the CWA building, is that the...
That's right, yeah. So
Limestone?
there's two car parks there. One that effectively backs onto the Civic Centre, and then the other car park there that fronts onto Limestone Street, the two car parks there that are paved. We occupy one of them and we lease out the other one at the moment to SEQ Water, I believe, some of those spots. I can speak to the report and how we came to the amount if you would like.
I now move that we move into closed session. May I put that to the vote, please? Yes, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Please let me know when we're in closed.
should just check if there's any members of the public. I don't think there will be, but we're live.
We're live, thank you. Thank you very much. We've just come out of closed session where we discussed a number of commercial and confidence matters on council disposing of some land. And I'll just go back to, we have 4 recommendations here. Know that the Deputy Mayor was the mover and Councillor Madser was the seconder. Will I open up for any non-commercial and confidence discussion on this particular item? No, I'll put it straight to the vote. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to notices of motion. I have nil notices of motion. Questions on notice. I have nil questions on notice. In that case, I'll now close this ordinary council meeting at 10:01. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
12:01.
What did I say?
10:01.
Sorry, 12:01. Thank you. Council, I hope that you can make your appointment.